guys, what's up? It is HSY in Korea. I'm back here with an important topic, I guess. This is actually something that I get asked a lot, like very often, and this is Korean beauty standards. So as we all know, Korean beauty standards in Korean dramas are really high, or even abroad. A lot of Korean Americans often talk about this, or maybe other people just in general, how Korean beauty standards are really, really high. We know it's like basically the world plastic surgery, or like the plastic surgery capital of the world. That's what it's coined as. And honestly, I mean, yeah, there's like a lot of high kind of like expectations for people to be pretty. I feel like when I first came to Korea in 2016, what I mainly realized is that almost everyone kind of really took good care of themselves, but more in a like appearance type of way. So for example, we would have in the US, when we have like midterms or finals, everyone comes in their freaking pajamas. Like all of us are in pajamas. But in Korea, even though it's midterms, even though it's finals, everyone would come in dressed, everyone would come in with their makeup, their hair done. I would go to the restroom and there would be girls like curling their hair, or there would be girls with a little curling thingy like on their bangs, like waiting for it to like really get that curl. So I think those are some things that you kind of realize that wow, like Korea really is a lot, like very invested into their appearance, into beauty, and it really is kind of like something that a lot of people are self-aware of, and very, maybe they're kind of like self-conscious about it. They don't feel as beautiful, and then there's like all these other stigmas and like societal issues that come with that. However, I am here to talk about how it affects me. So I get asked this a lot because first of all, obviously I'm not Korean. So if that, like, obviously, but another thing is that also my body type. So a lot of people do realize that I have a different body type than other, like most Koreans, or than just Koreans in general. So I get asked this often. I get asked if people call me fat, or if beauty standards affect me, and in what way do they affect me. So the main answer is no. And it's not that I don't see the Korean beauty standards, it's just that I feel like mentally I feel different, and I also don't get told directly by Koreans. Like I don't get told anything bad. I actually get like told a lot of nice things by Koreans. So I feel like for most foreigners this is kind of true, and I feel like if they do feel pressured by the beauty standards, then more than anything it's probably in their head rather than an actual Korean telling them like, oh, you'll never be as pretty as a Korean girl, or like, oh, you're not pretty. Although there are certain people that are mean enough to say rude things, but I feel like usually it's just as like a comeback. Like you didn't want to sleep with them, or you didn't want to do something and they got upset, so then they started insulting your looks or insulting your body. But for instance, with me, the one thing that I am self-conscious about is like my weight, but at the same time it's not like it's super, like it's like a super like thing that's in my, dug into my brain. Like I'm not super self-conscious about it. I don't feel like I'm a whale in Korea. I don't know, it might also be due to the fact that I don't live in Seoul. I live in Busan, and I also lived in Daejeon. I lived in Seoul for a while, but I feel like I honestly don't remember what life was like back then. It was so long ago. And also I just feel like, no matter what I do, no matter what I change, I'm never gonna be Korean. So like, why would I put myself in that category, or like, why would I try to make myself a piece of that puzzle? Like, I don't understand why someone would try to force themselves into a category or into an expectation that people aren't really expecting of you. Like Koreans don't expect us to look like Koreans, you know what I mean? So in my case, at least, like I don't feel like they expect me to use like Korean makeup. Although sometimes they'll be like, they will say like, oh, you wear too much makeup, or like, oh, you look better without makeup. But they tell me without makeup, like they see me without makeup and they'll say like, oh, you look better without makeup. So it's not like they're like, oh, you'd look better with Korean makeup. It's not that either. So it's just that regarding makeup. Regarding my weight, so I don't think I've ever been told anything too mean about my weight. The only time that I can remember was one of the guys that I was dating, when he was like, oh, like your stomach is bigger than mine, or like, oh, your arms are bigger than mine. But for the most part, other Korean guys that I've dated, if I ever say that I'm fat, they'll be like, no, you're not fat, you're pretty. And I'm like, I said I was fat, I didn't say I was ugly. But yeah, or like they'll say other things like, oh, no, you're not fat, you're fine. Like literally I've gotten so many Korean people that have kind of like not helped me, but they've said the opposite of what I thought when talking about my weight. So I'll be like, oh my god, I'm too fat or something. They'll be like, no, you're fine. Even though I feel like a lot of times they've been nice, but then other times, I feel like it is because my weight has been fine. Like not now, but I've lived in Korea for 4 years, so I've done the whole yo-yoing thing, like so many pounds, like 20 kilos or like 40 pounds. So I've done the yo-yo, so I've been down and up, and I've had people be like, no, 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 you're fine, like you don't need to be skinny, this and that. So I've had that, and I feel like that's a very positive reaction. And then the other part of my body, so aside from the weight, is also the fact that I have a different body type. So in Korea, I hear this all the time. I get told the whole, oh, you're so glamorous, or like, wow, you have so much glamour. So if you didn't know, in Korea, being glamorous or having glamour means that you're actually like, that you have big boobs. It's kind of, it's, I wouldn't say it's like oh, hourglass, it's not that at all, but it just means that you have like really big boobs. I don't know if it's true for butts. I don't have a butt, so I don't know if that's true for a butt too, but literally since 2016, and I get told that to this day by random people. They'll be like, oh my god, you're so glamorous, wow, your body is so glamorous. So my body gets over sexualized because of the way that it is. So yes, I'm a big girl in Korea, or like a bigger girl. I wouldn't say I'm that big, to be honest. I'm like a size 14. Like I just feel like I'm a high middle, or like a middle, somewhere in the middle. I don't know. I'm probably like a high middle, so I don't really feel like I'm like obese or whatever. I just, like, my body gets so over sexualized in Korea. So I'd be like, wow, it's so, like, they're so big, or like, wow, Korean girls could never, or like, oh my god, like Korean, like no Korean girls have your body. So for me, I don't actually get the negative aspects that come with being big. Like I never get told like, oh my god, you look like a pig, or like, oh, you should lose weight, look at this girl, look at that girl. I never get told that, or like, oh, if only you were skinny, you'd be prettier. I don't really ever get told that. Like, I just get over sexualized a lot for the most part. Another thing, I feel like just mentally, it's again like the only thing, me wanting to lose weight, like that's on me. That's back from the US as well. Like that's like a world thing to me. It's like Hollywood, all this stuff, but I don't really feel as much pressure or as much shame, just personally. I know other girls who do, and I know other girls who kind of like let it get to them, and it really does bother them, and they go into like different like eating disorders, or like not really healthy, like eating habits or whatever, or eating behaviors. So I know it does affect other people, but it doesn't really affect me. Like I just don't really, not that I don't care, but at the same time, like I don't hear bad things often, like almost basically never. So I don't hear anything negative, and it's usually always positive. And if it is like a negative, I feel like it's kind of like a fetishizing type of negative. So it's like, wow, your boobs are so big, or like, wow, like you're so glamorous. It's that type of thing. It's not really like, oh, you look like a pig, or something like that, or like, oh, you should lose weight, like, or you shouldn't eat that much. Like I don't really get that as much. So for me, that's why it doesn't really affect me. Another time that I did have someone kind of say something to me was a Korean friend, like a Korean guy friend. But I met this guy like at a bar, so it's not like I was expecting much from him. So when I met him, I weighed maybe like, I would say maybe like 62 kilos, so like 142 pounds. And then a few months passed by, and I ended up being like maybe 170 pounds. So maybe, I'm not too sure with kilograms, but maybe 79, 78 kilograms or something. And I remember the entire night, like he was just telling me the entire night, like, oh my god, like why did you let yourself gain so much weight? Like, wow, I can't believe you let yourself gain so much weight, the entire night. And he was just like, you were pretty back then, you were pretty back then. He's like, but no, he's like, you're pretty now, but back then you were even prettier. Like, what happened? Why'd you let yourself gain so much weight? So it was kind of just that, but it wasn't really like, he was the only person that kind of mentioned it. No one else really did. So, and it didn't really like get in my head that much. So I feel like if you guys come to Korea, I feel like it's on you. I feel like we're kind of responsible for how we feel towards the beauty standards. Like, I don't think that we are held to the same standards as Koreans. You might want to fit in, you might want to look as pretty as Korean girls, but like, you're pretty in your own way. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean, like, looking different does not mean looking ugly. And I feel like even then, although a lot of people in their minds, they think that they do look ugly or whatever, I feel like the reality of it is that you probably don't look bad. Like, you probably look really pretty. And like, to a lot of Koreans, like a lot of our features are different. So for them, like that's so interesting to see something different, and they'll end up actually being like, wow, that's so beautiful, like wow, that's so crazy, that's so like different, that is so beautiful. So like for example, for me, my nose, like I used to get bullied in the States for my nose because I had like a big, like a, I used to have a hump. I don't have it anymore, but I used to have a hump. And in Korea, even with the hump, people would be like, wow, your nose is so beautiful, it's so big. And I was like, what? And like that was the first time I ever heard someone complimenting my nose, was like in Korea, and I would get it complimented all the time. And even with the like hump that I had, I would tell people like I want to get a nose job, and they'd be like, why? And I would be like, for this. And like, no, 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 don't touch your nose, it's beautiful, like blah, blah. Like I would get that all the time. With my forehead too, like in the US, I used to get bullied for having like a big forehead. And in Korea, now I wear wigs, but back then I didn't. So like in Korea, literally I would get so many comments about my forehead being like beautiful, or like, wow, it's so like pretty, this and that. So for me, actually, it's been the opposite. As other foreigners, so I'm not trying to invalidate their experiences. They might have had negative experiences, but for me, for the most part, it's been really positive. And then sexualized, so like that's the negative part of it, like sexualized. But other than that, that's what the beauty standards for me are. As far as like makeup, I don't care. Like I like the way that I do my makeup, and I like doing it Western style, so I'm not really going to try to do it more Korean or whatever. And I don't really get negative opinions about it, or I don't know, like it's just not, it doesn't get into my head. Like when I go out or whatever, there's always Korean girls that come up to me like, wow, your makeup is so beautiful. Or I get even guys that compliment my makeup. They're like, wow, are you like a makeup artist? Like your makeup's so good, or like you're so talented, you must be an artist, or something like that. So that's just my experience. I feel like people ask me this all the time, so I just wanted to put it out there to kind of explain what living in Korea and what these beauty standards have affected me, and what they've been like for me. So basically, just to wrap it all up, they've not really affected me in a negative way. I've actually been told here that I'm very pretty or whatever. With my weight, again, like no one really comments on my weight, so not negative, not positive. And then with like my body type, it's just kind of being like, wow, you're so glamorous, or like, wow, you're so like, I want to over sexualized, not in a good way, but yeah. So that's kind of what I want to say. I think for me, it's been more of like a mental thing though. I feel like I'm the one that just allowed myself to be happy in like in what I look like, and how I, in my body type and all this stuff in Korea, even regardless of like the high beauty standards that there are. So yeah. If you guys have different experiences, then you can write them in the comments, or if you have some insecurities, then, you know, just don't worry about it. Just really work on your mental health, really work on being like strong, and not comparing yourself to Koreans. I feel like Koreans don't really compare you to them. I feel like usually it's the foreigners themselves comparing themselves to Koreans, or comparing themselves to like the commercials or like magazines or this and that of people looking beautiful. So I feel like it's kind of oneself doing all the comparison rather than actual Koreans for the most part. I don't know. If you might not agree, I don't know, because everyone's experiences are different. But yeah, this was just my experience. I get asked that a lot. I feel like people kind of worry because they're bigger. For me, like I'm bigger, but I get over sexualized, so it's not. I don't really see the negative. I mean, it's negative, but I don't see the negative like, oh shit, this makes me feel embarrassed, or oh, this makes me feel like shit type of negative. But anyway, that's it for today. So if you guys have any more questions, or you want to know anything else, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you later. Bye guys.